Now that you have your your image in your scene, um, you might have a problem with the overall getting your scene to fit, especially if you have a tall vertical image. So I just want to point out that to make corrections on that image plane, if it's just too tall, you select your camera and you actually go to the shot cam shape, and we'll go to the aspect ratio. I'm sorry, not the aspect ratio. We'll go to the display options, and you have what's called overscan. And the overscan you can set to maybe like a 5 or a 3 or a 4 or a 3.5 or a 2.5. And that will basically give you a more space in the mask area, and it allows your image to fit in your screen. So that might be an issue, especially if you're doing an image that has uh, a tall ratio, like a portrait as opposed to a landscape. This one doesn't give me really any issues, so 1.2, 1.1, something like that will be fine. You also have a gate mask here. The gate mask color, you can change that. The opacity of the gate mask as well, you can change to be completely dark. I like to see through a little bit so I can see my scene, but I actually prefer a little bit of a dark image. It makes me feel like I'm looking through uh, the camera lens. All right, so now I've locked the camera and I want to start blocking in my scene. So to do this, I'm going to actually create a panel. Go to my layouts. I'm going to do two panes stacked. You might do two panes stacked or side by side, but this way I'm going to have my image on top, and then down here I'm going to have my perspective view. So here I'm allowed to go through my scene and start to play with my geometry up here, and I'm going to go ahead and set my attribute editor and go to my overscan and say like 2 or even 2.5. All right, so there I can see the actual scene, what's happening. Over here I'm going to be working, doing most of my work. All right, so let's go ahead and create some geometry. So the first thing I want to do is maybe create a ground plane. So we'll just create a ground plane and scale it up and make sure it covers the scene. That's nice. That's why I like to keep this opacity on my time slider, so I can just move up and down. All right, so this is basically going to be my snow, and I'm just going to make it large enough to make sure it covers goes far enough back into the distance. So we'll just keep going a little bigger and a little bigger, and move it that way. And I think that's good because that's kind of lining up with his horizon line, so I know I've got a good perspective happening. Now, if you have something like buildings or a box or just something more geometric to line up your perspective, the first thing I do is block in something that can match that perspective. This is an organic setting, so I really don't have a whole lot. I'm just going to have to go based on size relationship of the trees and all that. So once I have this, I'm going to maybe increase the polygon subdivision. That looks pretty good there. And I don't really need all these polygons out on this outer edge, so I'm just going to select those ones. I'm also going to select these ones, holding Control Shift select, that adds to the selection, and then Shift greater than sign. We'll just bring that selection in until we get to up there, and I'll hit delete. Oops, too many. Let's do a Shift less than sign, or just undo a couple. There we go. I don't want to overbuild my scene, so I'm just keeping about as much as what I need. Alright, so now that I've got that, let's go ahead and build our first part of the scene, which is going to be the tree. So I'll make a nice cylinder in the middle of the scene. There it is. And we'll kind of reduce the subdivisions to 12. I can actually take the caps off. Subdivision caps. I think I can hit 0 there, can I? Oh, I can. I'm just going to delete the tops and bottom there. Can I increase the subdivision height? I can. Let's just give myself some subdivisions and then redelete these. Those. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my what I have here. I have delete history, freeze transformations, center pivot. That basically gets this guy ready to go. So moving him into location, kind of keeping centered with the scene really, and kind of trying to find out if that's going to work for me. Let's scale up this camera just a little bit maybe. Nah, I want to scale that up. Trying to decide, do I want to move this closer and make it smaller? Or do I just want to kind of keep it all right where it is? That's probably okay. Let's just do that. Now I'm going to grab edge loop. We'll scale it. Hit the letter 4. That will allow me to see things in a wireframe view, which is quite helpful, really. I'm gonna turn up the opacity. There's my next one. Oh dear. I've got problems. Somewhere along the line that did not properly get built. Alright, let's go back in time a little ways. Increase the subdivisions heights. You know what I did is I deleted faces and then I changed the construction history. So don't delete any faces until you create some construction history, get the subdivisions you want. And now I can go ahead, hit Control F11. That changes my vertice selection to faces. Hit delete, and now I can start to manipulate this. Hold R, left mouse, and go to object mode. Now scale this, move it until it goes into position. There we go. Now I'm not going to have any issues with missing faces. So I can see where the tree is actually intersecting the ground, needs to move forward. So I'm going to move that tree until it feels about where it's intersecting the ground plane, matches with what the photo is, or the illustration. There we go. Scale that up. Do edge ring and split. Rotate it, scale it. Let's get it right where I think I want it. Let's grab this bottom edge loop here, scale that, move it over. Let's do some soft selection. Kind of just move geometry. Some of these will probably come in just a little bit. Good, so I like how that is looking. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some, add a little bit of another edge ring right there. let's make some more trees to establish sort of the foreground and the background trees. So the foreground trees, I'm going to go ahead and model. Let's start with another polygon primitive. Face, F11, and delete. Before I do that though, let's make sure I get my polygon down to 12. So my trees all have the same amount of subdivisions on them. And delete. Oops. Hit Control F11, goes from vertices to faces, delete. And now I can move this tree back in space. Let's kind of match up the trunk size here. So I'm kind of staying somewhat consistent. And that way when I move this back, I can kind of guess how far back it needs to go in order to match the size. There we go. So both, where does it intersect the plane? Now we can make it maybe a little skinnier. I think I might do some subdivisions. One, hit G just to repeat that last command. Let's see, one there. And we'll just kind of hold control while I take the middle part of that selection. It's just going to select on the two axes. Move these over slightly. There we go, just duplicate it. Move one back a little ways, right about there. Nice. Let's see, got a couple trees way back there. A little bit more. Move these guys back into space. And let's just get them. This one's probably there. And there, way back here. Command D just duplicates it. Maybe there's something around here somewhere we just don't see. There's definitely one right up in there. Move it up, and let's make it a little larger. There we go. All right, so there's kind of about as much forest as I'm going to need right now. Everything's playing the camera. I'm going to go ahead and add a few more rough geometry, including my rabbit character. And let me bring that into the scene, and then we'll regroup. So I don't think you want to see all the modeling that has to happen, but the point is to just get in some really rough, what we call proxy geo. This is not the final model for the tree. This is just a stand-in for now as I start to lay out this scene. That way if I need to make adjustments to the camera, I can just unlock it, move the camera wherever I need to, or change the focal length in order to get these things to line up a little better. And once they're lining up nicely, then you just lock the camera again. So it's like that camera was good, he's locked up. Alright, so just keep locking in the scene, and let's just see where we get to.